The rain fell in thick sheets that night, like the sky itself was crying for the broken souls wandering beneath it. In the dim glow of the streetlight, a man named Daniel sat in his old, dented truck, staring blankly at the envelope in his trembling hands. His rent was overdue for the third time. His daughter's medicine had run out. And tomorrow, he might not have a job anymore. His knuckles tightened around the steering wheel as thunder rolled above, a storm outside, but a bigger one within. He was a single father, not by choice but by the cruel hand of fate. 2 years ago, cancer had taken his wife, leaving him alone with their 6-year-old daughter, Emily. Since then, every day had been a battle to keep the lights on, food on the table, and hope in his daughter's eyes. But lately, even hope felt like a luxury he couldn't afford. Sparkles, before we continue, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in miracles that find us when we least expect them, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Stories. Your small gesture helps more people discover stories that restore faith in humanity. Sparkles. That night, as Daniel drove aimlessly through the rain-soaked streets, his mind swirled with guilt and exhaustion. He was a good man, but good men sometimes break under the weight of the world. The clock on his dashboard blinked 10:47 p.m. when he noticed a faint movement on the side of the road, a small figure wrapped in a torn blanket, holding something close. Slowing down, Daniel squinted through the rain. It wasn't one figure. It was 5. A woman, drenched and shivering, crouched beside the curb with 4 small children clinging to her. The youngest, a baby, cried weakly in her arms while the others huddled close, their faces pale with hunger and cold. Something inside Daniel's chest clenched. He couldn't just drive past. He pulled over and got out, the freezing rain instantly soaking his jacket. The woman looked up, eyes wide with fear and shame. Her lips trembled as she whispered something he could barely hear over the storm. "Please, just some food, my kids haven't eaten." Her voice cracked like glass. Daniel looked at the children, their clothes torn, their cheeks hollow, their eyes dull from hunger. He swallowed hard. He didn't have much himself, but he couldn't ignore this. He helped them into his truck, wrapping his spare blanket around the shivering children. The woman kept thanking him between sobs, saying her name was Sarah. They had lost their home 2 weeks ago when her husband abandoned them after losing his job. Since then, she had been begging on the streets, doing whatever she could to keep her children alive. As Daniel drove them to the only diner still open that late, he thought about how easily life can shatter. One bad day, one lost job, one illness, and everything collapses. They sat together in the diner's corner booth, the kids devouring pancakes like they hadn't eaten in days. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she watched them. She didn't eat. She just kept whispering, "Thank you. Thank you, sir. God bless you." Daniel felt a lump in his throat. He didn't feel like a savior. He was barely holding on himself. But watching those kids smile again, even for a moment, gave him a warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. He paid the bill with the last $40 in his wallet, ignoring the voice in his head that reminded him he still had bills to pay tomorrow. After dinner, he offered to drive them to a shelter he'd heard of downtown. But when they arrived, a handwritten sign on the door said, "Full." Sarah's face fell. Her youngest began to cry again, a soft, tired whimper that broke the silence. Daniel hesitated. He looked at the woman and her kids, and then thought of Emily asleep at home, safe and warm. He couldn't leave these people in the rain. "You can stay at my place tonight," he finally said. "It's not much, but it's dry." Sarah stared at him in disbelief, her eyes filling again. "You'd do that? For strangers?" He shrugged. "You're not strangers anymore." When they reached his small apartment, Emily woke up, rubbing her sleepy eyes. She was surprised to see 4 new faces in the living room, but when Daniel explained, she immediately brought her own blanket to share. Within an hour, the children were asleep on makeshift beds, their small chests rising and falling peacefully for the first time in who knows how long. Daniel sat quietly at the kitchen table, staring at the flickering light bulb above. Sarah sat across from him, hands clasped. She told him her story, how she used to work as a cleaner, how her husband's drinking got worse after losing his job, how one day he simply disappeared, leaving her with 4 hungry mouths. She'd gone to relatives, friends, charities, but nobody could help. And now, here she was, sitting in a stranger's home, praying this kindness wasn't another illusion. That night, Daniel barely slept. He thought about how fragile life was, and how, despite everything, he still had more than many others. The next morning, he made pancakes again, the cheap kind that come from a mix, but Sarah's kids ate like it was a feast. Emily laughed with them, showing them her toys, and for a brief moment, the apartment was filled with the sound of joy. But reality returned quickly. When Daniel left for work that afternoon, his boss called him into the office. Sales were down. Cuts were coming. "I'm sorry, Daniel," his boss said softly, "we have to let you go." He stood there in silence, his stomach sinking. Losing this job meant losing everything, the rent, Emily's school, her medicine. He drove home in a fog of despair. As he parked, he saw Emily playing outside with Sarah's kids, their laughter echoing in the chilly air. Sarah came out holding a cup of coffee for him, her face lit with gratitude. When he told her the news, she went quiet. Then she reached across the table and said, maybe we can help each other." She explained that she used to clean houses and care for the elderly. If she could find work again, she could help with the kids while Daniel searched for another job. For the first time in days, he saw a flicker of hope. Together, they started rebuilding. Sarah helped around the house, and Daniel began driving part-time for a delivery company while applying for better jobs. Slowly, things began to shift. The apartment that had once felt empty now buzzed with life, kids laughing, dinners shared, prayers whispered before bed. Months passed, and Sarah finally found a steady job cleaning offices. Daniel, too, landed a full-time position at a construction company. They became like one family, bound not by blood, but by shared struggle and gratitude. Emily began calling Sarah Auntie, and Sarah's youngest would crawl into Daniel's lap during story time. One evening, as the sunset spilled gold through the windows, Daniel realized how much his life had changed. He wasn't alone anymore. He had found something deeper than relief, he had found connection, purpose, and love born from hardship. But fate wasn't done with miracles. A few months later, while Daniel was fixing his truck, a man approached the apartment, unshaven, exhausted, eyes full of regret. It was Sarah's husband. He had hit rock bottom, living on the streets after losing everything. He had been searching for his family for months, desperate to make things right. Sarah froze when she saw him. The children hid behind her, confused and scared. Daniel watched silently as the man fell to his knees, tears mixing with the dirt on his face. "I was a fool," he said. "Please, give me one chance to fix what I broke." Sarah didn't speak for a long time. Then she said quietly, "You left us when we needed you most. I can forgive you, but I can't go back to who we were." Daniel turned to leave, but Sarah stopped him. She looked at her husband, then at Daniel, the man who had saved her and her children. "Maybe," she whispered, "we were all meant to meet for a reason." From that day on, things changed again, but this time for the better. Her husband entered rehab with Daniel's help. Daniel, despite everything, believed in giving people another chance, because he knew what it felt like to need one. Slowly, the man recovered. He got a job at the same construction company as Daniel. The two men, once strangers, worked side by side, building not just homes, but a future for their families. Years later, on a quiet spring morning, they all gathered in a small park. Emily, now a bright teenager, was reading a story for a school project titled, "The Night My Dad Met an Angel in the Rain." Sarah's children sat beside her, smiling. Daniel watched them, his heart swelling with pride. He realized that sometimes, miracles don't arrive in lightning or thunder, they come as small acts of compassion, moments of shared humanity that change everything. And as the breeze rustled through the trees, he whispered a silent prayer of gratitude. Because the night he thought his life was falling apart was the same night it truly began.